3 disturbing true sleep paralysis horror stories. They say sleep paralysis is just your brain waking up before your body. A simple neurological hiccup. Nothing to fear. But try telling that to the people who've experienced something far more sinister during those helpless, frozen moments. Something that watches. Something that touches. Something that knows your name. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 deeply disturbing accounts from people who experienced sleep paralysis that went far beyond medical explanation. These are their stories, told in their own words, and I warn you, some of these details will stay with you long after you turn off the lights. Before we begin, if you're a fan of true horror and the unexplained, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. And if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis yourself, drop a comment below. You might not be as alone as you think. Now let's descend into the darkness. Story 1. The apartment in Seattle. My name is Marcus and I'm a software engineer living in Seattle. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that I'm not the type of person who believes in paranormal nonsense. I'm logical, rational. I trust data and science. But what happened to me over the course of 3 months in my apartment on Capitol Hill? I can't explain it. And I've tried. God knows I've tried. It started in February of last year. I just moved into a studio apartment in an older building, one of those early 1900s places with high ceilings and ornate molding that you don't see anymore. The rent was surprisingly cheap for the area, which should have been my first red flag, but I was excited to finally have my own place after years of roommates. The first episode happened about 2 weeks after I moved in. I woke up in the middle of the night, around 3 a.m. according to my clock, completely unable to move. I'd heard of sleep paralysis before, read about it online, so I wasn't panicked. My eyes were open, and I could see my room bathed in the orange glow from the street light outside my window. I tried to move my fingers, my toes, anything, but my body simply wouldn't respond. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow, deep, deliberate breathing that wasn't my own. It was coming from the corner of my room, near my closet, where the shadows seemed just a bit darker than they should be. My rational mind screamed that it was just an auditory hallucination, a common symptom of sleep paralysis, but my heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. The breathing got closer. I could hear footsteps now, bare feet on my hardwood floor, each step measured and purposeful. Whatever was making that sound was walking toward my bed. I couldn't turn my head, couldn't even move my eyes, but in my peripheral vision, I saw it. A shape. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It stood at the foot of my bed, and even though I couldn't see its face, I knew it was staring at me. Then, just as suddenly as it started, I could move again. I shot up in bed, gasping, and turned on every light in my apartment. The corner where I'd heard the breathing was empty. Of course it was. I checked my closet, under my bed, everywhere. Nothing. I chalked it up to stress from the move and the new job, maybe too much caffeine, and eventually went back to sleep. But it happened again. 3 nights later. Same time. Same paralysis. Same presence. This time it spoke. I can't really describe what the voice sounded like. It wasn't male or female, wasn't loud or soft. It was like the words were being placed directly into my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. It said my name. Marcus. Just that. Nothing more. But the way it said it, with such familiarity, such intimacy, made my blood run cold. The figure was closer now. Not at the foot of my bed, but beside it, leaning over me. I still couldn't see a face, just a void where features should be, but I could feel its breath on my cheek. Cold. So impossibly cold that I could see it condensing in the air between us. When I snapped out of it that time, I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on my couch with all the lights on until sunrise, then immediately started researching sleep paralysis. Every article said the same thing. It's a common condition usually brought on by stress, irregular sleep schedules, sleeping on your back. The hallucinations are just your brain misfiring. Nothing real. Nothing to fear. I wanted to believe that. I really did. I started sleeping with my lights on. I changed my sleep position. I meditated before bed, avoided caffeine after noon, tried every remedy the internet suggested. For almost a week, nothing happened and I started to relax, convinced I'd figured it out. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke up paralyzed as I'd learned to expect, but this time was different. The presence wasn't across the room or beside my bed. It was on top of me. I could feel the weight pressing down on my chest, crushing the air from my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, to thrash, to do anything, but my body was completely locked down. And then I felt hands. Long, skeletal fingers with too many joints wrapping around my throat. They were ice cold, so cold it burned, and they squeezed. Not hard enough to cut off my air completely, but enough that I knew it could. Enough that I understood this thing, whatever it was showing me it had power over me. The voice came again, no longer in my mind but whispering directly in my ear. I've been waiting for you, Marcus. I've been in this place so long and you're finally here. You feel right. You'll do perfectly. I don't remember what happened next. I must have passed out or finally broken through the paralysis, because I woke up on my floor, my sheets tangled around me with bruises on my throat. Actual physical bruises. 5 on each side like fingerprints. That's when I stopped trying to rationalize it. I took pictures of the bruises and went to my doctor, who suggested I might have scratched myself in my sleep, despite the marks clearly coming from outside pressure, not scratches. I could tell she thought I was either lying or crazy, so I didn't bother explaining further. But the episodes continued. Every few nights, always around 3 a.m., always with the same presence. And each time it got bolder. It would sit on my bed and I could feel the mattress compress under its weight. It would run those terrible fingers through my hair. Once, I felt it trace the outline of my face like it was memorizing me by touch. The worst part was what it said. It would whisper things, terrible things about what it wanted to do with me, what it had done to others who had lived in that apartment before. It talked about a woman named Sarah who'd lived there in the 1970s and how it had kept her until she stopped screaming. It described a man named James from the 1990s who tried to fight it and how that had only made things more interesting. I started researching the building's history, digging through old newspaper archives and public records. What I found made me physically sick. There had been 3 suicides in my specific unit over the past 70 years. 3 people who'd hung themselves, all listed as having suffered from severe insomnia and paranoid delusions before their deaths. I tried to break my lease. My landlord refused, said I'd signed for a year and there were no grounds for early termination. I couldn't afford to pay rent on 2 places, so I was stuck. I stopped sleeping in my bed. I tried to sleep at coffee shops, in my car, anywhere but that apartment. But it didn't matter. The presence found me wherever I was. If I fell asleep, even for a moment, I'd wake up paralyzed with that thing nearby. The final episode happened in late April. I'd been awake for almost 3 days straight, too terrified to sleep, surviving on energy drinks and fear. But the human body can only take so much. I passed out on my couch around midnight, fully dressed, lights on. I woke up paralyzed at 3 a.m. Of course I did. But this time I could see it clearly. The thing was standing directly in front of me, and the street light outside illuminated it fully. It was humanoid but wrong in every proportion. Arms that hung past its knees, fingers that each had an extra joint, making them spider-like. Its skin was gray and seemed to shift and writhe like it was covered in something alive. And its face, God, its face. It had eyes, too many eyes, scattered across what should have been its forehead and cheeks, all of them fixed on me with an intelligence that was ancient and hungry. It smiled. Its mouth opened far too wide, revealing rows of needle-like teeth, and it smiled at me. Tonight, it whispered, you stop fighting. Tonight, you let me in completely, or tonight, you hang yourself like the others. Choose, Marcus. But choose now. I could feel it then, a pressure in my mind like fingers pushing through my skull, trying to pry me open from the inside. It was trying to get into my head, to take control, and I could feel my resistance crumbling. I was so tired, so completely exhausted, that part of me wanted to just let it happen. To let it be over. But then I thought about Sarah. About James. About the others whose names I didn't know. I thought about becoming another statistic, another suicide in Unit 304, and something in me snapped awake. I don't know how I broke the paralysis that night. Every other time, it had released me on its own terms. But this time, through sheer force of will or terror or some combination of both, I forced my finger to move. Just my right index finger. Then my hand. then my whole arm. I shot up off the couch, screaming, and the thing recoiled like I'd hit it. I didn't pack. I didn't grab anything. I ran out of that apartment in the middle of the night and I never went back. I called my landlord the next day and told him I'd abandoned the lease. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about my security deposit or the rent I'd already paid or my possessions still in that apartment. I just knew I could never spend another night there. I stayed with my brother for a month, sleeping with every light in his house on, afraid to close my eyes. Eventually, I found a new place, a modern apartment in a new building with no history, and slowly, very slowly, I started to sleep normally again. I haven't had an episode of sleep paralysis since that night. It's been over a year now, and I'm starting to feel like myself again. But I did some more research on that building, and I found something that still gives me nightmares. There are currently no listings for Unit 304. According to the building's rental website, it's undergoing extensive renovations and is unavailable for lease. But I drove by there last month and I could see someone's curtains in the window. Someone is living there. Some poor person who probably got a great deal on rent and has no idea what's waiting for them at 3 a.m. I think about warning them sometimes. But what would I even say? How could I make them believe me? I barely believe it myself most days, even though I lived through it. All I know is this: if you're ever apartment hunting and you find a place that seems too good to be true, with cheap rent in an expensive area and a landlord who's eager to get you to sign, maybe ask why the last tenant left. And maybe, just maybe, look for somewhere else. Because some places don't want tenants. They want victims. And whatever is in Unit 304 on Capitol Hill is still waiting, still patient, still hungry for the next person who's foolish enough to think it's just sleep paralysis. Story 2. The Thing in My Daughter's Room. My name is Jennifer. I'm a single mother to an 8-year-old girl named Emma, and I need to tell the story because I don't know what else to do. I've seen 3 doctors, 2 therapists, and even talked to our priest, and no one can help me. No one believes me. But you need to understand, what's happening in my house is real and it's getting worse. It started about 6 months ago, right after Emma began complaining about nightmares. She'd wake up crying, saying there was a tall man in her room who watched her sleep. At first, I did what any parent would do. I checked her closet, looked under her bed, left a night light on, reassured her that dreams weren't real. But the nightmares continued, and Emma became increasingly insistent that the man wasn't part of her dreams. She said he came when she couldn't move, when she was awake but trapped in her body. That's when I realized my daughter was experiencing sleep paralysis. I'd had it myself a few times in college, so I understood how terrifying it could be, especially for a child. I read her articles about it, explained the science in terms she could understand, even showed her videos of other people talking about their experiences. I thought education would make it less scary. But Emma kept describing the same figure. A tall man, she said, with no face and hands that were too long. He'd stand in her doorway, then slowly walk closer until he was right beside her bed. Sometimes, she said, he'd sit on her bed. Sometimes he'd lean down close to her face. And sometimes he'd whisper things to her. When I asked what he whispered, Emma wouldn't tell me. She'd just start crying and say she didn't want to talk about it. I took her to a pediatrician who suggested it was just stress from the divorce. Emma's father and I had split up the previous year, and he'd moved across the country for work. The doctor prescribed some mild anti-anxiety medication and suggested regular therapy sessions. I agreed to the therapy but held off on the medication, hoping we could work through this without drugs. The therapy seemed to help at first. Emma opened up about missing her father and feeling scared about the changes in our lives. She seemed happier during the day. But the sleep paralysis continued, and the tall man kept visiting her. Then I started experiencing it too. It was a Tuesday night in September. I'd fallen asleep watching TV on the couch, which was unusual for me, but I'd been exhausted from a double shift at the hospital where I work as a nurse. I woke up around 2 a.m., unable to move, staring at my living room ceiling. I'd experienced sleep paralysis before, so I knew what was happening. I tried to stay calm, to regulate my breathing, to wait for it to pass. But then I heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps coming from the hallway where Emma's room was located. My daughter's room is at the end of the hall, and I could hear the footsteps moving slowly from her doorway toward the living room, toward me. Each step seemed to take forever, like whatever was making them wanted to draw out my terror. Then I saw it. The exact figure Emma had described. Impossibly tall, at least 7 feet, with a thin frame that seemed to bend wrong in places. Its arms hung too low, nearly reaching its knees, and its fingers were grotesquely elongated. But the worst part was its face, or rather the lack of one. Where features should have been, there was just smooth, pale skin stretched tight over a skull. It stood in the doorway between my hallway and living room, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and even without eyes, I knew it was looking at me, studying me. I tried to scream, tried to move, tried to do anything. But I was completely frozen, helpless, as this thing that had been terrorizing my daughter took one step into my living room, then another, until it was standing right beside my couch. It leaned down, bringing that featureless face inches from mine, and I could feel cold radiating off it like it was made of ice. Then it spoke, but not with a mouth. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding me, pressing into my ears and my mind. "I've been waiting for you to see me, Jennifer. I've been patient. I've been good. But it's time now. Time for you to understand." Then I could move again. I bolted upright, gasping, and the thing was gone. Just vanished. I ran to Emma's room and found her sitting up in bed, wide-eyed and pale. "You saw him," she whispered. "It wasn't a question. You finally saw him." I climbed into bed with my daughter and held her until morning, both of us too scared to close our eyes. After that night, I saw the figure regularly. Not every night, but often enough that I dreaded going to sleep. It would appear during episodes of sleep paralysis, always standing, always watching. Sometimes it would speak, saying cryptic things about waiting and preparing and the right time. I started documenting everything, writing down each episode, each word it said, trying to find some pattern or meaning. Emma and I compared notes and realized we were often experiencing paralysis at the same time. We'd both wake up frozen at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., both seeing the tall man. He'd go to one of our rooms first, then the other, like he was making rounds. I tried everything. We went to a different church and had the house blessed. I burned sage. I put salt lines across doorways. I even contacted a paranormal investigation team I found online, but they said they only investigated places with documented hauntings, not active cases, whatever that meant. Nothing worked. The visits continued. Then things escalated. About 2 months ago, I woke up paralyzed to find the tall man doing something different. He wasn't just standing and watching. He was leaning over Emma's bed in my doorway, his impossibly long arms stretched out, his fingers hovering inches above where her head would be on her pillow. I could see her door was open, which I had specifically closed before going to bed. I tried to scream to warn her, but no sound came out. I could only watch in horror as those fingers slowly lowered toward my daughter's head. And then, just before they made contact, I broke through the paralysis. I screamed Emma's name and ran to her room. She was sitting up in bed, crying, with 5 red marks on her forehead. Not scratches, but marks like burns in the shape of fingerprints. That's when I knew this wasn't just sleep paralysis. This thing was physical. It could touch us. It could hurt us. I took Emma to the emergency room, and the doctors asked me repeatedly if someone had hurt her, if there was abuse in the home. They couldn't explain the marks. They didn't match any common injury pattern. I could tell they thought I'd done it, that I was some kind of monster hurting my own child. Child Protective Services got involved. They interviewed Emma, interviewed me separately, inspected our entire house. The marks had faded by then, but they'd seen the photos from the hospital. Eventually, they closed the case, determining there was insufficient evidence of abuse, but I could tell they still suspected me. I got a letter saying I was being monitored. The tall man started appearing even when we weren't paralyzed. We'd catch glimpses of it in mirrors, in the corner of our eyes, standing at the end of the hallway. It was like it was becoming more solid, more present in our world. Emma stopped sleeping entirely. She'd stay awake all night, terrified to close her eyes, then crash during the day at school. Her grades plummeted. She lost weight. The school counselor called me in for a meeting and suggested Emma might need inpatient psychiatric care. I was losing my daughter and I didn't know how to stop it. 3 weeks ago things came to a head. We were both in Emma's room, both wide awake, sitting on her bed at 3 a.m. because neither of us could sleep. We were reading a book together, trying to pretend everything was normal, when the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. We could see our breath. The tall man appeared in the corner of the room. Not during sleep paralysis. Not during a hallucination. It was just there, solid and real and undeniable. Emma grabbed my hand, her fingers ice cold and shaking. The thing took a step toward us, and for the first time I wasn't paralyzed. I could move. I put myself between it and my daughter. "No," I said. My voice shook, but I said it. "You can't have her. Whatever you want, you can't have her." It tilted its head, that alien gesture that always made my skin crawl. Then it spoke, and this time I heard its voice with my ears, not in my mind. It sounded like wind through a tunnel, like dead leaves scraping concrete, like nothing that should be able to form words. "I don't want her, Jennifer. I never wanted her. She was just the key. Children see more clearly. They helped you see. And now that you can see me, now that you truly believe I can have what I've always wanted. I can have you." It lunged forward, moving with impossible speed, and one of those long-fingered hands wrapped around my wrist. The pain was instant and excruciating, like my arm had been plunged into ice water and fire simultaneously. I screamed and tried to pull away, but its grip was iron strong. "Mommy!" Emma screamed, and she did something I'll never forget. My 8-year-old daughter picked up the book we'd been reading, a heavy hardcover, and threw it as hard as she could at the tall man's head. The book passed right through it like it wasn't solid at all and hit the wall behind it. But the thing paused, its head snapping toward Emma with that terrible tilted angle. And in that moment of distraction, I pulled free. I grabbed Emma and we ran. We didn't stop to pack. We didn't grab our phones or wallets. We just ran out of that house in our pajamas and got in my car. I drove to the nearest police station, both of us hysterical, trying to explain what had happened. The police went to my house. They found Emma's room exactly as we'd left it, door open, book on the floor. They found no signs of forced entry or any intruder. They found no evidence that anyone had been in our house except us. But they did find something. On Emma's wall, written in what looked like frost or ice crystals that were already melting, was a message, "I'll wait." The police took photos before it melted completely. They have no explanation for how it got there. The detective assigned to our case has been sympathetic but clearly thinks we're experiencing some kind of shared delusion. She's recommended psychiatric evaluation for both of us. We've been staying in a motel for 3 weeks now. I had to take a leave of absence from work. Emma hasn't been back to school. We're eating through my savings at an alarming rate. I know we can't live like this forever. Eventually we'll have to go home. We'll have to face that thing again. Last night, Emma woke me up at 3 a.m. She was standing by the window of our motel room, looking out at the parking lot. "Mommy," she whispered. "He's here." I looked where she was pointing. In the parking lot, illuminated by the flickering motel sign, was a tall figure. Too tall. Too thin. It was standing perfectly still, and even from the second floor, even through the window, I could tell it was looking up at us. As I watched, it raised one hand in what could have been a wave, or a beckoning gesture. Then it vanished. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know where we can go where this thing won't find us. I don't know how to fight something that exists in that space between sleep and waking, something that can reach through from wherever it comes from and touch us in our world. All I know is that it wants me. It's been patient, it said. It's been good, but its patience is running out. I'm telling this story because I need people to know what happened to us. If something happens to me, if I disappear, or if they find me and call it a suicide or an accident, I need someone to know the truth. I need someone to take care of Emma and believe her when she tells them about the tall man. And if you're reading this and you've experienced sleep paralysis, if you've seen something that watches and waits and knows your name, I'm so sorry. Because it might not be just in your head. It might be real. And it might be coming for you too. We're leaving the motel tomorrow. I don't know where we'll go. Maybe somewhere far away, somewhere this thing has no connection to. Maybe it can't follow us forever. Maybe if we run far enough and fast enough, we can escape. But I don't think we can. Because last night after Emma fell back asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. And just before dawn I felt it, that familiar paralysis creeping over my limbs. And I heard that terrible voice, clear as day, whispering in the darkness of our motel room. "You can't run from me, Jennifer. I'm already inside. I've always been inside. And soon you'll understand what that means. God help us, because I don't think anyone else can." Story 3. The Mirror in the Bedroom. My name is David, I'm 31 years old, and I'm a freelance graphic designer working from home in Portland, Oregon. I'm sharing my story because I think I'm losing my mind, and I need to put this somewhere, tell someone before I completely lose myself to the fear and paranoia that has consumed my life. This all started 6 months ago when my girlfriend Rachel moved in with me. We'd been dating for 2 years and it felt like the natural next step. She had this beautiful antique floor mirror that she'd inherited from her grandmother, an ornate thing with an intricately carved wooden frame, probably from the 1920s or 30s. It was about 6 feet tall and heavy as hell. We spent an entire afternoon figuring out where to put it and eventually settled on positioning it in the corner of our bedroom, angled so we could both use it when getting dressed. Rachel loved that mirror. She'd tell me stories about her grandmother, about how she used to sit in front of it every morning to do her hair and makeup, about how her grandmother claimed it was special, that it showed the truth. I thought it was a sweet sentiment, the kind of mystical thinking that older generations sometimes attach to objects. The first time I experienced sleep paralysis was about 2 weeks after the mirror arrived. I'd never had it before, not once in my life, so when I woke up at 4 a.m. completely unable to move, I was terrified. My eyes were open and I could see our bedroom clearly in the pre-dawn darkness. Rachel was asleep beside me, her back to me, breathing peacefully. And in the mirror I could see my reflection. But something was wrong with it. The reflection was looking at me. I mean really looking, not just reflecting. While I lay frozen in bed, unable to move my eyes or head, my reflection in the mirror was turned toward me, its eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made my blood run cold. And it was smiling. I wasn't smiling. My face was paralyzed in a neutral expression, but my reflection wore a wide, knowing grin. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only a minute or two, I could move again. I immediately sat up and looked at the mirror. My reflection did exactly what it should do, moved as I moved, normal and identical. I checked on Rachel, who was still sleeping soundly, then sat there for a long time, trying to convince myself it had been a dream or a hallucination. But I knew what I'd seen. My reflection had been independent of me, had moved on its own. It had been aware. I didn't tell Rachel. How could I? "Hey honey, my reflection in your dead grandmother's mirror was looking at me funny." Sounds insane. So I kept it to myself and tried to forget about it. But it happened again. And again. Every few nights, I'd wake up paralyzed, and every time, my reflection would be doing something different than I was. Sometimes it was sitting up while I lay down. Sometimes it was looking in a different direction. Once, I woke up to find my reflection standing beside the bed, looking down at me with that same unsettling smile while my actual body remained horizontal and frozen. I started researching sleep paralysis obsessively. I learned about hypnagogic hallucinations, about how the brain can create incredibly vivid and realistic visions during these episodes. I read accounts from hundreds of people who'd seen shadowy figures, demons, aliens, all sorts of terrifying things that seemed completely real at the time. I tried to convince myself that's all this was. But the reflections kept getting worse. More detailed. More knowing. After about a month, my reflection started mouthing words at me. I couldn't hear anything, but I could see its lips moving in the mirror, forming sentences I couldn't quite understand. It became almost playful, like it was teasing me, showing me just enough to disturb me but not enough to comprehend. I suggested to Rachel that maybe we should move the mirror, maybe put it in the living room or the hallway. She asked why, and I fumbled for an excuse about the bedroom feeling too cluttered. She looked around at our very spacious, minimally decorated bedroom and said she thought the mirror was perfect where it was. I didn't push it. That's when I made my mistake. I started covering the mirror at night. I waited until Rachel was asleep, then draped a large blanket over the mirror, completely obscuring it. I told myself it was just a precaution, that if I couldn't see the mirror during sleep paralysis episodes, maybe my brain wouldn't create those disturbing hallucinations. That night, I woke up paralyzed around 3 a.m. I felt relief at first because I couldn't see the mirror, just the dark shape of the blanket-covered frame in the corner. But then I heard something. A tapping sound. Rhythmic and patient. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from behind the blanket. Something was tapping on the glass of the mirror from the other side. The tapping got louder, more insistent. I could see the blanket moving slightly with each impact. Tap, 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 tap. Then the blanket fell. It didn't slide off or get pulled off. It just suddenly dropped to the floor like whatever force had been holding it up was released. And there in the mirror was my reflection, pressed against the glass from the inside, its hands flat against the surface, its face inches from where the glass would be. It wasn't smiling anymore. It looked angry. Its mouth opened wide, far wider than a human mouth should open, and it screamed silently at me. I could see its throat, could see something dark and writhing inside it, could see rage and hatred and something else, something hungry in its eyes. I broke through the paralysis by literally rolling out of bed, crashing onto the floor with a loud thump that woke Rachel. She turned on the light, concerned, asking what happened. I looked at the mirror while lying on the floor, and my reflection was normal, looking confused just like Rachel was, perfectly in sync with my position and expression. I had a nightmare, I told her. Rolled out of bed. She helped me up and we both got back in bed. The blanket was still on the floor by the mirror. I left it there. The next morning, Rachel asked me why I'd covered the mirror. I told her I'd been cold in the night and grabbed the blanket half asleep. It must have fallen. She accepted this explanation, but I could tell she thought it was weird. I stopped covering the mirror. Whatever was in there, whatever my reflection had become, didn't like being hidden. I didn't want to make it angrier. The episodes continued, but they evolved. My reflection started showing me things. During one episode of Paralysis, I watched as my reflection stood up from the bed, walked to Rachel's side, and leaned over her sleeping form. It looked at her with an expression I'd never seen on my own face, something predatory and cold. Then it looked back at me and placed a finger to its lips. During another episode, my reflection went to our bedroom door, opened it, and walked out of the room. I could track its movement through the house by the creaking floorboards. It went downstairs. I heard our kitchen cabinets opening and closing. Then silence for a long time. Finally, I heard footsteps coming back up the stairs, and my reflection walked back into the bedroom, back to the mirror, and stood there looking at me until the paralysis ended. In the morning, I went downstairs and checked the kitchen. Nothing seemed disturbed or out of place. I checked all the knives in the block, counted them. They were all there. I didn't know what I was afraid of finding, but the relief that everything was normal was overwhelming. Then Rachel came downstairs for breakfast. She made coffee and asked me casually why I'd been up in the night. I wasn't, I said. She looked at me strangely. Yes, you were. I half woke up and saw you leave the room. Figured you were getting water or something. You were gone for a while. My blood went cold. What time was this? I don't know, maybe 3:30? 4. The exact time of my sleep paralysis episode. The exact time I'd watched my reflection leave the room. I must have been half asleep, I said. Don't even remember. But I did remember. I remembered every second of lying frozen in bed while my reflection roamed our house freely. I started sleeping on the couch some nights, telling Rachel I was having trouble sleeping and didn't want to disturb her with my tossing and turning. The truth was I was terrified of that bedroom, of that mirror. But even on the couch, I'd wake up paralyzed sometimes and I'd know somehow that upstairs in our bedroom, my reflection was awake and moving. Things escalated about 3 months in. I woke up one morning to find scratches on my chest. 3 long, deep scratches that had bled during the night, staining my shirt. Rachel saw them when I took off my shirt and immediately asked what happened. I must have scratched myself in my sleep, I said, but we both knew that was impossible. The scratches were too deep, too deliberate. They looked like claw marks. Rachel insisted I see a doctor. The doctor took one look and asked if I had a cat. When I said no, he suggested I might be experiencing dermatillomania, a condition where people unconsciously pick at their skin. He prescribed a mild sedative to help me sleep more deeply and sent me on my way. But I knew the truth. I'd had another paralysis episode that night. I'd watched my reflection stand at the foot of our bed, watched it lean over me, watched those hands reach down toward my chest. I'd felt the pain, sharp and burning, even though I couldn't move or cry out. And I'd watched my reflection smile as it dragged its nails across my skin. The worst part was that in the mirror my chest had bled. But in the reflection, it wasn't my reflection doing the scratching. It was me. The real me lying in bed, scratching myself while my reflection watched with satisfaction. It was showing me something. Some kind of truth I didn't want to understand. I became obsessed with the mirror. I'd stand in front of it for hours during the day, studying my reflection, looking for any sign that it wasn't perfectly synchronized with me. I'd test it, making sudden movements trying to catch it off guard. But during my waking hours, it was always normal. The strangeness only happened during the paralysis. Rachel grew increasingly concerned about my behavior. I was losing weight, barely sleeping, jumping at shadows. She suggested couples therapy, thinking our relationship was causing me stress. I agreed to go, desperate for any kind of help, even though I knew a therapist couldn't fix what was really wrong. During one session, the therapist asked about any recent changes in our lives or environment. Rachel mentioned the mirror, how I'd suggested moving it, how I'd covered it that one night. The therapist latched onto this, suggesting that perhaps I had some unconscious association with the mirror, maybe related to anxiety about Rachel moving in, about our relationship progressing. "Do you think the mirror is causing your sleep problems?" the therapist asked me directly. I wanted to scream yes. I wanted to tell her everything. But Rachel was sitting right there, looking at me with such concern and love, and I couldn't bear to sound insane in front of her. "No," I said. I know that would be irrational. But the therapist had given me an idea. That night, I set up my laptop on our dresser, angled so its camera would capture both me sleeping in bed and the mirror in the corner. I told Rachel I wanted to see if I was thrashing in my sleep or doing something that might explain the scratches. She thought it was a good idea. I went to bed terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Finally, I'd have proof. I'd be able to see what really happened during these episodes. I woke up paralyzed at 2:47 a.m. according to the laptop's timestamp. I could see the laptop's light still recording. And in the mirror, my reflection was already sitting up, already looking at me with that terrible smile. It stood up from the bed and walked toward the laptop. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might die right there. It reached out toward the laptop, and for a moment I thought it was going to close it to destroy the evidence. But instead, it adjusted the angle, tilting the screen so the camera pointed more directly at the bed. Then it turned to face me, still standing beside the dresser, and it spoke. I couldn't hear it, but I could read its lips clearly. "Watch this." My reflection walked back to the bed and climbed on top of me. I could feel the weight, cold and heavy, pressing down on my chest. I could feel those hands wrapping around my throat. I couldn't breathe. I tried to thrash, to fight, to do anything, but my body wouldn't respond. I watched in the mirror as my reflection strangled me. I watched the life draining from my own face. I felt my consciousness starting to fade, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. Then Rachel stirred beside me. Just a small movement, shifting in her sleep. But it was enough. My reflection's head snapped toward her, and for just a moment, its concentration broke. I gasped in a breath of air and broke through the paralysis, lurching upward. There was nothing on top of me. The room was quiet except for Rachel's steady breathing and my own ragged gasps. I looked at the mirror. My reflection showed me sitting up in bed, looking terrified, exactly as I was. I grabbed the laptop with shaking hands and checked the recording. I watched the entire episode from the camera's perspective, and what I saw made me want to vomit. The video showed me, the real me, sitting up in bed at 2:47 a.m. It showed me getting up, walking to the laptop, adjusting the camera angle. It showed me walking back to the bed and climbing on top of my own chest, my hands reaching for my own throat. It showed me strangling myself while my body lay beneath me, unmoving. And the expression on my face, the one doing the strangling, was that same cold smile I'd seen in the mirror. The video showed me trying to kill myself. But I had been paralyzed. I had been the one lying in bed, helpless. It was my reflection that had been moving, but the camera couldn't tell the difference. To any outside observer, I was having some kind of psychotic episode, acting out a suicidal fantasy while in some kind of fugue state. I deleted the video. I couldn't let Rachel see it. I couldn't let anyone see it. It was the exact opposite of the proof I'd needed. The next day I made a decision. I waited until Rachel left for work, then I took a hammer to the mirror. I was going to destroy it, smash it into a million pieces, end this nightmare once and for all. I raised the hammer and swung it as hard as I could at the glass. The hammer bounced off like I'd hit solid steel. The impact sent painful vibrations up my arms, but the mirror didn't crack. Didn't even scratch. I tried again and again, hitting it with all my strength, but I couldn't damage it at all. Finally, exhausted and defeated, I sank to the floor in front of the mirror. And that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the mirror's reflection, the bedroom behind me was different. The walls were a different color, darker. The furniture was arranged differently. And there were other things in the reflected room. Dark stains on the walls. Something that looked like scratches in the hardwood floor. And written on the wall above where our bed would be, in what looked like dried blood, were words, "He's almost ready." I spun around. Our actual bedroom was normal. Clean walls, organized furniture, no stains or scratches or messages. I looked back at the mirror, and for a moment the reflection showed our real room again. But I knew what I'd seen. That night I tried to tell Rachel everything. I sat her down and started to explain about the sleep paralysis, about the reflection that moved on its own, about the video, about the message in the mirror. I watched her face change from concern to fear to something else. Pity maybe. Or disbelief. "David," she said gently, "I think you need help. Professional help. More than therapy. I think you might be having some kind of breakdown." "I'm not crazy," I said. "I know you believe that. But honey, mirrors don't have minds of their own. Reflections can't hurt you. What you're describing, it's not possible." "The scratches?" I said desperately. "You saw the scratches. You did that to yourself. The video proved it. You showed me." I hadn't shown her the video. I deleted it. But I couldn't say that without sounding even crazier. "Please," I begged. "Please just get rid of the mirror. Sell it, give it away, throw it out. Please." Rachel looked at me for a long time. "That mirror was my grandmother's. It's one of the only things I have from her. I can't just throw it away because you're having nightmares." "They're not nightmares," I said, but I could see it was no use. She didn't believe me. She thought I was sick. "I'm going to call your sister," Rachel said. "I think maybe you should stay with her for a few days while we figure out what's going on with you." That was a week ago. I've been staying at my sister's apartment, sleeping on her couch, trying to convince everyone that I'm fine, that I just need some rest. My sister wants me to see a psychiatrist. Rachel calls every day, loving and concerned, but I can hear the distance in her voice. She's scared of me now. But here's the thing nobody knows. The sleep paralysis hasn't stopped. Even here, 50 miles away from that mirror, I still wake up frozen. And when I do, I see it. In the black screen of my sister's TV, in the darkened windows, in any reflective surface in the room. My reflection watching me, smiling at me, waiting. Last night, I woke up paralyzed at 3 a.m. on my sister's couch. In the blank TV screen across the room, I could see my reflection clearly despite the darkness. It was sitting up while I lay down, and it was holding something. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Keys. My keys. The keys to my apartment. My reflection dangled them tauntingly, then stood up from the couch in the TV's reflection. It walked out of the frame, and I heard the front door of my sister's apartment open and close quietly. I broke through the paralysis and checked my jacket pocket where I'd left my keys. They were gone. I called Rachel immediately, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "David? It's 3 in the morning. Rachel, listen to me. Lock the bedroom door. Lock it right now and don't open it. Please." "What? Why?" "Just do it. Please." I heard rustling, heard her getting out of bed. Okay, I'm locking it." "David, you're scaring me. Is the mirror still there? In the bedroom?" "Of course it is. Where else would it be? Look at it. Look at the reflection. Tell me what you see. Silence for a moment. Then, I see the bedroom. I see myself holding the phone. David, what is this about? Do you see me? In the mirror, in the bed, do you see me? Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was small, frightened. David, you're not here. You're at your sister's. Why would I see you in the bed? Rachel, what do you see in the reflection? Exactly what do you see? I see, oh my God. David, there's someone in the bed. In the reflection. But there's nobody in the actual bed. There's someone in the mirror that isn't here. David, what the fuck is happening? I heard her scream. I heard the phone drop. I heard her yelling my name, heard crashing sounds, heard her crying. Then the line went dead. I'm in my car right now, driving back to the apartment as fast as I can. I've called 911. I've called my sister to tell her to check her apartment. My keys are gone and I think I know where they went. I think I know what my reflection has been preparing for all this time. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to replace me. And now it has keys to my apartment and Rachel is alone with that mirror, and I don't know if I'm going to be fast enough. I'm telling you this story now because I need it documented somewhere. I need someone to know what happened, what's happening. If I don't make it, if they find my body or if I disappear or if something worse happens, you need to know about the mirror. Don't trust your reflection. Don't trust any mirror, especially old ones, especially ones that are supposed to show the truth. Because maybe they do show the truth. Maybe they show the truth that we're not alone in our skin. That there's something else looking out through our eyes, something that's been waiting for the right moment to step through. I'm almost at the apartment now. I can see the building. The lights are off in our bedroom window. I'm going to break down the door if I have to. I'm going to smash that mirror with a sledgehammer if I can. I'm going to save Rachel. But I'm afraid. I'm so afraid of what I'm going to find up there. Because I keep thinking about what I saw in the mirror that day when I tried to destroy it. That message on the wall. He's almost ready. What if it wasn't talking about me? What if it was talking about itself? What if my reflection has been getting ready all this time, practicing, learning, perfecting how to exist outside the mirror? And if it's ready now, if it's crossed over completely, what does that make me? The original? Or just another reflection that's about to be erased? I'm at the building. I'm going in. If you're reading this and I haven't updated it, you'll know I failed. You'll know that something took my place. And if you see me after this, if someone who looks like me and talks like me comes back, maybe check the mirror. Maybe see if I cast the right kind of reflection. Because I don't think the thing wearing my face will. Closing. 3 stories. 3 people whose lives were shattered by something that science tells us is just a neurological phenomenon. Just the brain playing tricks. Just hallucinations. But I want you to ask yourself something tonight before you go to sleep. When you experience sleep paralysis, when you see something in the shadows of your room, how do you really know it's not real? How can you be sure that the barrier between sleep and waking, between our world and somewhere else, doesn't thin during those moments when our consciousness is split? Marcus still can't enter his old building without feeling that presence pulling at him. Jennifer and Emma are still running, still looking over their shoulders, still seeing that tall figure in their peripheral vision. And David? Well, nobody's heard from David since the night he drove back to his apartment. The police found Rachel unharmed but traumatized, unable to explain what happened beyond saying that she saw 2 Davids, and didn't know which one was real.